Hello guys, welcome back to the CCNA routing and switching video series brought to you by ABY Design and Tech. In this video, we will detail on how to connect to a Cisco device for management and configuration purposes. So far, we have looked through all the theory behind devices can communicate over a network. But as a network engineer, even though we need to understand how communication takes place, our main role is to configure these worker devices like switches, routers, firewalls to allow and facilitate this communication. Okay, so like I said before, we've seen all the theory behind how these devices in a network communicate, but we need to actually start looking at switches, routers, firewalls, wireless access points, and how we can connect to those devices to actually configure them so that they can perform their job and perform their function within a computer network. So there are two ways to actually connect to a Cisco device to be able to configure and monitor and manage that device. The first way is via the console port. The other method is going to be over a network connection. So the way that it works is that we would use a computer or a laptop running Windows, maybe it's a Mac operating system or Linux operating system, but we would use a computer and we would use what we call a software program on that computer to be able to connect to that device and then be able to communicate with that Cisco device. So to be able to send commands to the Cisco device, since the Cisco device would then send information back to us, which would then be displayed on the software program. So it would be a software program which we install on our computer, which would allow us to interact with that device. Now, just to set the scenario, imagine that you've just purchased a Cisco device, it's arrived at your house or arrived at your workplace, and now you want to be able to interact and configure that Cisco device. Well, the way to do that is that we would use a physical connection. So we would run a console cable from our laptop or computer into the console port of the Cisco device. So the console port is a port present on every single Cisco device, and it allows for management of that device. So when the device is not it doesn't have a connection to the network, the console port allows us to then connect to that device for management purposes. So the console port is identified by a blue square around the actual console port. And so the console port itself can either be a RJ45 port on some of the older switches, or it can be a USB port on some of the newer switches. And so all the console port allows us to do, it allows us to just literally run a console cable from our laptop computer into our Cisco device, allowing us to have a physical connection which we can send and transmit information over. And then we would then load up a software program on our computer so that we can actually use our software program to then interact with the device. So obviously that's the console port. Now this is what the console cable looks like. A normal console cable, or some of the older standards of the console cable, is going to be a RJ45 connection on one end and a DB9 connection on the other end. And like I said, this cable just runs from your computer into the Cisco device. And this console cable allows us to carry information, commands, etc. from our software program over the cable into the Cisco device. Now, I know what you're thinking. This connection here, DB9, no modern day computers have that connection. So what can we do? Well, if your computer doesn't support that connection, then we purchase what's called a serial to USB adapter. So what this does is that this allows us to plug in the DB9 connection from the console port into this end of the serial to USB adapter, and then we would plug the USB port into the USB connector on our computer. And usually to get these to work, you'd have to install some device drivers to get the adapter to work and be recognized. But this is a method of allowing us to connect to the console port if the console port uses a RJ45 connector, like here. If the console port obviously uses a USB connector, then we'll simply just run a USB cable from our laptop into the console port on the Cisco device. So again, the console port just allows us or provides us with a way to physically connect our laptop to the Cisco device for management purposes when that Cisco device has no configuration. Okay, now that we've got all the connections sorted out, what is the software program that we install on our Windows machine, our Linux machine, or a Mac OS machine that we can use to actually interact with this device? Now, the software program is known as a terminal emulator. Examples are PuTTY, Solar PuTTY, TerraTerm, Secure CRT, etc. And what these programs allow us to do, they present us with a command line interface that we can use to send commands to our Cisco device, but also allow us to see the information that our Cisco device is sending back to us, such as configuration output, show commands, etc. And so when you install a terminal emulator, you would have to you'd have to have a connection to that Cisco device to be able to then use that software program to then communicate with it, example, over a network or via the console port. So in this case, if you wanted to connect to the device over the console port, then you would choose the serial option here, and then you would choose your COM port or your communication port. So moving on to the COM port. The COM port is just a virtual port present on your computer, which allows the software program that you have downloaded to manage your Cisco device or to communicate with your Cisco device, to configure your Cisco device, is a virtual port that all that communication takes place over. Okay, and then to find the COM port which has been assigned to your serial or USB adapter, you would just navigate to your device manager and then look for the next COM port which is active apart from COM port 1. And then going back to this slide over here, is that with the console settings, with the terminal emulator program, we have to configure some settings in order for the information that is being exchanged over the console port to be recognizable and to be displayed in a format which is easier recognizable for the human eye. And so we would set baud rate to 9600, data rate to 8-bit, parity to none, stop to 1-bit, and flow control to none. Now, like I mentioned before, is that we would primarily use the console port when we want to connect to a device for the first time to put some configuration on it, or when we want to connect to a device which has for some reason fallen or been disconnected from the network. However, if that device has got network access and is currently on our network and is functioning as normal, then we can use what's called SSH or the Telnet protocol to manage our devices remotely. So SSH stands for Secure Shell. This allows us for secure management of our Cisco devices. So any commands that we send, any information that our device feeds back to us, to our software program that we're communicating with the device over, will all be secure. Now with Telnet, that does allow for remote management of Cisco devices. However, that's all sending clear text. So things such as passwords and usernames will be sending clear text, meaning that if someone were to sit between that communication, our Cisco devices would be compromised. Now, more about these sort of protocols later on, but this video was just to describe that if you were to get a Cisco device from new, how would you then connect to that Cisco device so you can start to get some configuration on it and configure it for what it needs to do. And this is through the console port, downloading a terminal emulator program, and obviously running the console port, the console cable. So getting the console cable, running it from the console port on the Cisco device to your computer, then downloading the terminal emulator program, clicking on the serial option, configuring all the console settings, and then clicking OK. And finally, when it's all said and done, this is what the connection is going to look like. So imagine that this is a brand new switch that you're trying to configure. You would power the switch on, plugging the power cable to the main supply. You would then run the console cable from the console port into your serial to USB adapter. Serial to USB adapter, the USB port would then run into the computer. You would then load up a terminal emulator program on your computer, such as PuTTY, Terraterm, etc., which you've previously downloaded. Once that's loaded up, you would choose the serial option, choose the correct COM port, press OK, and then you now have access to that device. So you are now being presented with the command line interface of that Cisco device, and now you can send commands to it, and then that Cisco device can then feed information back to you, and it will be displayed on that terminal emulator software program. And to be fair, that's all there is to it. So it's literally simple as that. When you have a new Cisco device, you would boot it up, plug in the console cable into the console port, buy a USB to serial adapter, plug in the other end of the console port into the USB to serial adapter, plug it into your computer, download a terminal emulator program like PuTTY, Terraterm, load that up. You would then choose the correct COM port, press OK, and then you now have access to that device. Your software program is now connected to that device, and now you can send commands over the console cable to that Cisco device. Okay, if you found this video useful and would like to see more content like this, then please subscribe to my channel. If you found this video useful, then please share with others so that we can get high quality IT training to the masses free of charge. Thank you very much.